All right. So I made a mistake, and the live demonstration has 75 steps in it. We've got 40 minutes to do this, actually. We've got 36 now because of we went over a couple of minutes. So my phone will start dancing in about 36 minutes' time. But whatever we don't, I'm going to speed through some of these processes today, but what I'll do is next week I'll actually record each of these steps that's in the handout and actually upload the process video separate. So might have to speed through some stuff, but if we focus on the processes and the components today, then we can then you'll be able to see the video afterwards. So it's kind of extension, I guess, of the presentation. I didn't realise how much I have to do. Alrighty. Revision management. So, first of all, before we start, I could probably just go and have a beer maybe. Who actually struggles using the revision management within Archicad? Just a few people. So it's probably 50% of the audience. So I guess the question is that of the people that are using revision management, are you actually comfortable with the way you're using it right now? So you are. Oh, that's good. Well, do you know it back to front? Oh, maybe here. I was actually starting to feel a little bit tired, and I thought to myself, I should find someone to do this for me. But anyway, let's look in terms of the topic, in terms of introduction about what this whole tool's about. Let's talk about the output expectations that people are expecting this tool to actually generate. Let's look at the components that make up revision management, and then look at the revision management processes, okay? So they're the steps we're going to try and cover off on in the next 33 minutes. So in terms of an introduction, the revision management tool essentially is trying to meet the needs, like similar to what you've seen today with regards to the stair tool and the railing tool. It's a tool that's been developed for a global solution, but the irony of it is that we're all kind of wanting the same outcome, but the outcome we all want is just slightly different. And that slight difference is essentially what's actually driving and creating the complexity that this tool has and the number of pieces that are part of the puzzle. Now, the scary thing is that I remember when this feature was first implemented, and I remember looking at it in the beta testing, and I think I spent literally 2 or 3 days actually pulling this tool apart and trying to understand the steps that would actually be required to get something valuable out of it. And essentially you start pulling your hair out and you get all twisted up. But the irony of it is this tool is very powerful, it's very capable. There are a few little quirks, and then we find things at 11 o'clock last night that, kind of do work that we thought didn't work. But, the challenge is once again, the complexity of it can confuse some people. So it's about just simplifying it and breaking it down into pieces so that people can actually then not be scared of this feature and not be scared of the tool. So in terms of output expectations, so let's talk about the different variety of things that people are actually expecting when they're dealing with revision management. So first of all, we've got the drawing title block. So in the most simplest scenario, we want to see a revision number, a letter or a code that represents that revision. We've got revision history, so details built into our title blocks. And some people, and the thing is, this is all about flexibility, so we're all doing things differently. So the irony is we're all going in the same direction, but we all want to do it slightly differently. Revision clouding, so actually having clouds on our layout sheets that represent or identify to the people we're collaborating with that a change has occurred. And then something we touched on early at the start of the day yesterday when we were talking about templates is file naming names of incorporating your revision details into your file naming and transmittals. We've got 40 minutes today, we don't have 2 hours, so we're not going to be cover off on transmittals. There is a solution that I did create as part of my template a couple of years ago that most people may have their hands on already. I know there's a solution from Mac Interact. I think they've built one into their tool as well in terms of a transmittal into their template. So there are a couple of solutions out there, and unfortunately Archicad falls a little bit short in terms of how we in Australia want to graphically represent a transmittal. So once again, we're going to kind of think about this and don't overcomplicate things. At the end of the day, we've got to try and find the most simple solution for your revision management that actually meets your business needs. Don't overcomplicate it. So once again, it's putting into place into your template. So the first thing you got to think about is implementing as many of these steps within your template as possible. So your team members aren't driving a manual, you want them driving an automatic, okay? So we're going back to that whole concept of putting things into place that you're going to constantly be doing over and over and over again. So let's go through 3 examples. Now these examples are the way that I think they work, but it just demonstrates some of the capabilities of those features, which then you can, for those that haven't used this well or need to know how to use it better, you can potentially see the opportunities that you can take away with you. So in concept design, you know, we've got pretty simple title blocks in concept design. In this instance, I might just want to have a revision number and the revision date shown on my title block. Moving into documentation, we might want to maintain those pieces of information from concept design, but then move into including revision history on our title block, okay? We might also want to have our layout sheet naming to export with the current revision number. Now, moving into tender and construction, this is where the complexity takes the next step up, and we want to move ahead with the stuff that we've already dealt with in those earlier phases, but now we actually want to include revision clouds, because you wouldn't be looking to do revision clouds during your design and documentation stages, because you may as well just cloud the whole sheet in most instances. But when you're at a contractual phase, it's the time when it's actually really important to clearly identify where changes have occurred. So let's look at revision management and the components that actually make up this feature within Archicad. So first of all, we have issues. So issues are kind of fun things, which we're not going to go into details about until after we go through this list. We have change manager. We have change markers. We have the revision history object. We have project indexes. So they're the kind of key components of it all. So let's look into issues, and this is the little dialog box that you get when you deal with an issue. An issue is exactly what it is. All right, so for those that aren't aware of it, issue is the process that you're going to undertake to issue documents to someone. So the documents that you issue as part of that issue maybe have a revision attached to it, or they may be the same as the last time you issued them. So that's all it is. So you access the issues via the navigator to the layout book and then right-clicking to create a new issue. Issues can drive new revisions. So you can see up here the second one that's grayed out there, create new revision in all included layouts. You can do that. You can choose to do that for all of them. Unfortunately, you can't just use the issue tool to drive a partial up revision of items. The problem with this is that sometimes the revision numbering may not align with your standards. So what you can do is that you can see the next box above there, it says override revision ID of all included layouts. You can potentially use the ID there to actually drive that naming convention of your revisions. I don't recommend that method. It's just one method I don't like. But you've got to be aware that it exists, and most people it might work for your business to do it that way. So issue in the schema, you can include details that are specific to that issue to include on your layout sheets or transmittals, okay? And issues can control how change markers appear on your layout sheet. So you can see here where it says show your markers, there's the ability there to only show the latest revision, or you can show all, okay? So you can control a few things, and with this issue, what do I want to see when this goes out? So if you are using clouds as part of your revisions, and you may have been using that during documentation phase, you might be going out to tender and you don't want to show any of those changes to the person that you're issuing it to. Or you could be issuing it to a person you don't want to see any certain changes. Or there could be a situation where the builder says, I want to know what all the changes have occurred on the project since tender. You can turn on show markers for the whole time, and then you can see and piece together how that all works. Mind you, document management software these days, you shouldn't need to do that. So in terms of change manager, the next component, so changes are the primary controller to revisions. Okay, so this is what drives a revision on your layout sheet. So this is where the fun begins. Changes can be applied to individual elements or to your layout sheets. So when a change is applied to an element, all views that are containing that element will then go into a new draft revision number. Now that might work for some, but from my perspective, you want to have more control. So right now in the demonstration file I'll open up, I have the window set so you can see transparency. So that means I can see elements that are internal on an external elevation. So if I turn around and applied a change to that internal wall, because that internal wall can be seen through that elevation, it means that that drawing will say it's revised, and you don't want that. So you want to go into a bit more thing. Now, one of the things that the warning comes up every single time. Remember to update your views prior to issuing, but you know that's nothing to do with revision management. That's just about good practice with publishing documents. The difference is when it's applied to a layout sheet, it'll go into a new draft revision number also until you actually issue it. So you can also add changes into your schema, and you can include more details that are specific to that change to include in your layout sheet or transmittal. And changes can be linked to change markers, but at the same time, changes can be created by change markers. So once a change is made as part of an issue on that certain layout sheet, it can no longer be used and a new change must be created. Change markers. Oh, we all like a good revision cloud, don't we? But pretty simple, that one, isn't it? Change markers are used to identify changes. So change markers can be placed onto layout sheets, or they can be placed directly into your file, into your actual working environment. My preferred method is actually to go directly on the layout sheet, so as you can control how it graphically outputs. And, you know, for example, if you have multiple views that are placed on a layout sheet and you want to basically put a cloud around all of those views instead of just individual clouds for each individual view, it means that, like, the approach I like to do is have do things one way, so you're not having confusion as to, oh, do I put the cloud on this week or do I do it here because based on what I'm doing? So the view I take is I like to put them all on the layout sheets. So change markers actually can create new changes, or they can link to an existing change marker. Now, in this instance, my preferred method is to only use linked markers, so you actually control changes using the change manager and then link the markers that you have, that you create, to an existing change. Change markers that appear on drawings is controlled by the issue level, which we talked about before. So in terms of the revision history object, so this is an object that's been created by Graphisoft. There's two versions, a simple version and a complex version. The complex version enables you to put in multiple changes, and it displays each of the different individual changes that occur per issue. Typically, I use a modified complex version with additional scheme fields added and renamed and graphically adjusted, which I'll show you shortly. This has to be placed directly onto a master, or if you're crazy, each layout sheet. Note that it actually doesn't work if you place it into a worksheet and then place your worksheet onto your master layouts, because it's assigned itself information from where it's placed. Okay, so it can't work on a worksheet that's placed. It's drawing on everything. So project indexes, obviously project indexes are used for a few different purposes. So we can generate lists of all of our layout sheets, their details, their current issues, and typically that's what I do for a title page. So you can kind of have a cover page which has the current issue for everything. You can export it out to Excel and create transmittal records, which is a process that I've adopted. And as I said, natively within Archicad, it's something we can't achieve to meet what we graphically would like to achieve here in Australia. But there are a few ways to do it. And as I said earlier, it needs an external product to achieve it. All right, let's go through the processes. So, the first key step obviously is initially setting this up within your template. Then what we're going to do is go through some of the workflows. So, for our workflows in concept design, we talked about having a layout sheet to include our current revision number and date. In documentation, we're going to add a little bit more information. And then tender and construction, we're going to add a little bit more detail again. All right, let's see if this is going to work. And we've got time to do it. Okay. So I've just opened this up off to the side, but if you need to know where to find your change manager, it's via Window, Palettes, and located here. So what I've done here is I've opened up a copy of the international template version, and I've kind of made some adjustments and additions to it. So the first thing I'm going to look to do is adjust the issue schema, and in adjusting the issue schema, we're going up to the top of our tree of our layout book. We're going to right-click, then we're going to go into, I remember what I'm doing, book settings. So within here, we have our book settings, which picks up all of the standard stuff that we're used to and we're used to dealing with. But the area that we're going to deal with right now within our template is over here next to the new issue button. We're going to click on the little down arrow and we're going to edit the schema. Now, out of the box, we have ID, name, issue date, and issued by. And what you'll find is that these are the two areas that you can populate yourself. ID does get controlled by the software, which you can override. The name is the name of the issue that you would like to apply to it, so you actually manually fill that text in. Issue date is controlled by your computer. So if you're in a situation where you as a practice will always look to issue the drawings on the day that you're actually going to be publishing it and creating the issue, you can use the out-of-the-box issue date. But what I have added into my workflows, and the way you can do this is just by clicking on the Add button, and you add a new field. So what we have added is issue date, and by doing that, I can prepare for an issue on a Wednesday and Thursday on some layout sheets, because you could be working in a large team and you could be going, all right, I'm responsible for delivering these drawings. I know the issue is going to be on Friday, but I'm going to finish my work on Wednesday because I'm very proactive. All my friends are lazy, I don't know. But by using this, it gives you the flexibility to override the out-of-the-box in the computer settings. And issued by is also driven by your profile on your computer. So you want to be able to control the naming convention of how it's issued by, because say for example, you mainly want to use your initials, whereby the system information of your computer won't automatically match that. Now, other things that you can do within issues, which other people are doing, which I'm not demonstrating today, is you can add other additional fields into this that align with what you want to do. So, for example, under this, you talk to Michael Hersey from Wilson Architects, and he will have included below all of this the names of the people he was going to issue it to for that whole project. And the purpose of issue, the format of issue, and all of the different tabs that you'd see on the top of your transmittal. So when he creates this data, he can create a project index and export it to Excel and then read that information and self-populate a whole transmittal based on each individual issue. So we've added those custom pieces of information, so it's really important. to understand what you need as a business. And the reason why we have to do this schema edit first before we do any of the other placement is because our auto text relies on having a placement of these schemas in place before we do it. So we're going to click OK on that. So we've done that. Now what you want to do is set up initial changes in the schema that's attached to each one of your changes. Now the approach that we used at Fulton Trotter was an initial of who was responsible for that change. So each individual team member used their initials at the start and a dash and then a sequential number afterwards. Scott's already smiling. I reckon he's changed the schema already. The cat's away, the cat leaves the nest and they go crazy. But in here you apply your change description. See, once again here you can see automatically when this last modifier, that's been controlled by my computer. And you can see here because of the mistyping I did when I first bought this laptop, I don't even have an N at the end of my name. So, I don't know, I don't get it. But in this instance, I've added initials to this change. Now, why have I done that? So when I apply a change to my layout sheet, I may have a whole team of people that are delivering that project. And I personally might be responsible for half a dozen of those layout sheets, okay, in total. Whereas if I only use the initials from the issue level, the issuer of that documentation set would be responsible for every single drawing. Whereas I actually want to change it so that individuals are in charge of the quality of that each individual drawing. So that's why that's been incorporated. Now, once again, depending upon the deliverable requirements that you have and what you want to incorporate into your revision history that goes on your layout sheet, add additional parameters into your schema to reflect that. So once you have one of those set up, and that, I skipped a step in the sense of that's how you actually apply a new change. And you'll see once I start a new change, it keeps the naming convention and keeps sequentially growing from there. So this is the first step. So I've set up the schema for my layout sheets. I've set up my issue. I've set up my schema for my changes. Step 3 out of 700. All right, I can't even remember where I've gone. But so as I said, this is the out of the box. So as I talked about with out of the box, you want to add additional information into the template that's existing. So in this instance, I've created myself three different layout sheets to align with the methodology of delivery that I want to have. So as we talked about, with concept design, my primary interest with the layout sheets was to include 2 pieces of information. What were they? Everyone forgotten? He gets a Malteser. He listened. All right. So we go in, and in this instance, we go to auto text, and you'll see here under layout revisions, you'll see that I now have the opportunity to pick up these pieces of information that I'd added in earlier. So you can see here, issue date's part of that. Now, once again, as you guys most would probably be aware, you can add in, if you have different ways of doing this, could be date, and you can have manual text, and then do that if that's the case. So it can form part of a string of text that's integrated with different steps, okay? Which I don't want that. So the next step, obviously, is our revision ID. So then we're going to pull that data once again from the auto text. So that's what we're pulling out, the current revision ID. So you see here, issued by and issued date. They're all those hard-coded ones that we don't want to work with. So now we've set up our first layout sheet. It was pretty simple, that one, wasn't it? So now we're going to go into our documentation title block settings. So the positive is that we can just copy and paste our revision ID across from our concept design set. But up here, what we've integrated or implemented is the revision history item. So what I'm going to do is I'll build this one from scratch, only because I haven't got the right, there it is. Searching for it. So we use a simple title block for this one, or the revision history for this one. Let's open this up a little bit more. So in here, you have the ability to control the number of rows that you want to have appearing. You can control borders. You can control sorting. You can start from bottom to top, top to bottom. You can choose to exclude the first revision because sometimes that's something that some people do in another country. I can't remember. Sabi, do you know why they want to exclude the first revision? In any case, there's an ability to filter. So as I suggested before, there's a trick that Fulton Trotter have now done now that I've left the office. They're changing the world, making it a better place, where you can create custom ID and you can actually filter things that you want to only show in this object. So for example, if you have a situation where you have all your preliminary revisions that you've done through all of design and documentation, but when you go to tender, you want to clear the revision so the contractor doesn't know how many times you've changed the design, because then if he sees you changed it 20 times in 2 months, he might think, oh, I'm going to price this a bit more expensively because I'm going to have a lot of variations. They can't keep their mind straight. So you can filter. You can choose the text style and all of the nice, beautiful controls and stuff like that. But here we get to play around with the content. So depending upon your needs in a business for what you want to have appear within your revision settings, you can see here that we have a whole list of things. Now, I might jump and show you some of these extra things that are here, but you can see here that there are a number of other items here that are, what you'll see is actually layout specific options that you can incorporate into this actual object. But typically, we have our revision ID. In this instance, I'm not going to use a changed ID. I'm actually going to call it the issue name, because for me, in the design and documentation, normally when I issue a drawing out with a new revision, it's a global purpose as to why I'm doing it. But we can see in the next step why it could be different for other people. Oh, sorry, I went the wrong way. Issue date, which was our new issue date. Then we have our revision issue name. And then we're going to have our issued by. Because during the design phase, you might find that we're going to need a little less information. The control isn't so important on the documents. Now, that looks a bit odd, doesn't it? All those different kind of capitalizations and odd names like that. And you know what, I really don't want to call it that. So the positive is that we have the next step. Within the next step here, I can go in here and I can just go date. Oh, actually, that was out of the box. I like revision better. And this could be details. And this one can be initials. Oh, actually, one step I did forget. Where is it? This is a nice little hidden feature. So I'm a fan of actually doing my revisions from the bottom up. And this always tricks me out every time. But this little button that's hidden right here with the title, you kind of think a title belongs at the top, but it's actually in the middle. You can actually change where that lives as well. So you can control all that as well, which is important. Now, at the same time, you also want to be able to control whether or not elements are centered or left or right justified. And in this case, I won't adjust those. So there's other kind of ability you have within this as well, where you can show watermarks on it as well, and then you can actually incorporate change markers as well on top of it, and then fiddle with all the other different little display settings in terms of pens and lines and all that sort of stuff, because it's, you know, every architect has different ways of doing things. So what we won't do is we won't place that one. I'll open up this one and show you that just quickly. And you'll see I've cleaned out a lot of that. I've adjusted how I want my revisions to work, all on the bottom. Use the same details, adjusted the wording, and away we go. Now quickly we'll go over to We're never going to get to the end of this. In this version, we've changed it to change name. So this is for the period of time where you actually want to have the change name on each sheet to be potentially different dependent upon the change that's occurred within your project. In here, I think I've gone to my change initials because that person was in charge of it, etc., etc. So now we've built our template. File, save, write the workflow for your team members, and they'll all freak out. All right, concept design. So we're in concept design. Now there's going to be a period of time where we're going to issue our first set of drawings. So in this layout book, you'll see here I've got my concept design layout book. Oh, I skipped one step. This is the most important step. Someone asked a question about it the other day. Quick publishing sets. So we're going to go to our layouts, the top tier in this instance, right click on the top tier, and we want to rename items. So in here, we want to have a custom name, and automatically it gives you source ID and source item number. But what you then might want to do is you might have a current revision number, and for instance, I want to put an underscore. Some people actually like putting it in brackets as well. So you could do that as well. So when we come down to there, you can see how it's going to name itself. Now, at the moment, the revision is actually missing from between those brackets because it currently doesn't have the revision. But at the same time, you may have more complex naming conventions you have to address. So at the moment, that's at the parent level right at the top, but you can come down and rename items and adjust them to actually suit specific folders or individual sheets, okay? So you may have a certain way in which it's named on a drawing, but you actually want to change it to be slightly different. You can put a combination of manual text and auto text in that. So we've done that, which I almost forgot because we've now got only 2 minutes left. Now we're in concept design. So in the first instance, we're going to issue a revision out in the first time because we're going, oh, our client's going to love our design. It's this really ugly box and it's got a gable roof. Oh, we're the best architects in the world. All right, so what we're going to do is right-click on the top of the layout book. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new issue. Now in the first instance, you'll kind of go, hang on a minute, Nathan, what's going on here? You haven't applied changes to anything. On the first time you issue a set of layout sheets, you do not need to apply a change to it. Okay, so it automatically identifies that it needs to do that. So I'm lazy. Normally you're supposed to open the drawing manager, update your views because you're a good worker and you know that you're going to send out views that are actually up to date. But I'm going to be naughty and continue anyway. So our issue ID. Now this is where the fun begins. Archicad typically will run this at 0, 1, and then this will then set up the revisioning numbering system that you have for all your layout sheets. Does anyone have anything more unique than numbers, sequential numbers or ABCs, apart from Fulton Trotter? Yep. Yeah. So you have these complex, convoluted things, which means you can't actually use the Archicad issue ID system to actually chop and change. So Fulton Trotter are crazy as well. We have P1s during design and documentation, and then we go to A afterwards, which is all sorts of crazy. So the ID then of these issues actually do not drive the revision numbering. You have to actually override them, which causes some grief. So I'm going to issue off P1s today, but I'm going to use this ID here of O1. Now, during concept design, the issue name isn't so important because of the fact that I don't have it on the layout sheet. But what would be really good is for auditing purposes, it might be valuable to actually incorporate that so that you can go back and see in the database, why did I issue this set of drawings? And I don't need to worry about issued by, but once again, this could also be a good audit trail. So if you actually want to maintain all of those sorts of things. So because it's the first issue, it's going to create a new revision of all included layouts. And as I said, we don't want to check that button because that override will then give it that number or that identifier. So we're going to scroll down the bottom here. It's going to see 01, work in progress. We can come up to here and then we can go right, click on here and see tree by current issue. And we're going to see that all of these drawings in our future sets are also incorporated into that issue. Now in this instance, we don't want to issue all these drawings. So what we do is right click on the parent folder of those other issues and remove from current issue. Remove. So now we have 3 drawings we want to issue. Now, another test I want to show you, which is we're going to remove the perspective on the first instance because when we sent this to the client, all we actually did was a floor plan and some elevations to start with. So we're going to remove that. We're going to assume everything's okay. We've checked all the drawings, and then we come up and we close the current issue. Now what you're going to see here, we got it as a revision 01 because once again I made a mistake. I can't believe I made a mistake. So I've gone and given the revision number 01 when I really wanted to give it P1. So let's actually go back. Let's reopen the last issue. Geez, thank God technology saved me today. Now, there's a couple of ways in which you can change the revision ID. You can come down here and change it here. All right, time to finish. All right, P1. Now what we're going to see is when we scroll out, it's changed to P1. So both drawings now have P1. So now I'm going to close the issue and it works. Okay, so that's the kind of approach. And you can see the date here. Now, I would have loved to have gone on and shown you the processes. Actually, no, we'll show you one more process because what we're going to do is we're going to create a new issue again. And in this instance, this is a client perspective. Issue date's going to be the 8th. And once again, by doing this, I can control the date because, you know, I'm going to do my work today and issue it to my client tomorrow. Now, because I haven't issued the perspective sheet, it automatically includes it in the issue. And it gives it a new revision number. So what we're going to do here, don't forgive the beautiful architecture, is we're going to give this our code that we want, which is the P1. Actually, I should show you how to do that in the other location. So we go up into the right-click layout settings. We can come into the ID and change it there. And you'll see that changes. Now, in this instance, we're going to remove these drawings from current issue, remove these drawings from current issue. Now, what's happening is that this set of drawings is saying I only want to issue drawings that have a new revision or I haven't issued before. So what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate 2 things, and we're going to miss it on the other parts, but what we'll do is our elevations haven't changed, but we actually want to issue it to the client. So what we can do is add that to the current issue. So at the bottom there, sorry, if I click on the sheet first, we'll see it's got revision P1. We're going to include it in the current issue. It's going to stay as P1. Now, talking about the workflow before, in terms of my plans, I'm going to be updating something internally in here, and I've decided to update it. Now, it's concept design. I don't want to go into the problems of clouding my drawings. I want to add a change directly to my layout sheet. So in here, I'm going to use my first change. Internal door moved. Now you're going to believe me that I did that, okay? Okay, so there's a couple of ways in which you can apply this change. You can right-click on it, add it to the current layout. There's the other ability to select multiple layout sheets, right-click, go to the layout settings, come down here and add a change. So there's a couple of different ways in which you can do it, and I've probably forgotten one. The one I actually like doing is drag and dropping. You can drag and drop it. And see how it jumps up to P2? So now it's blue, indicating that it's had a change applied to it. So you can see here the black one is blank because it hasn't been given a revision, and our perspective is our first issue. So we're going to go back to our current issue, and you'll see here that It doesn't automatically give, whenever you add a change, it doesn't automatically add it to your issue. So what we want to do is we want to add it to the current issue as well. Go into our current issue, we have our 3 drawings. Then we're going to close out our current issue. So that now has P1, our elevation still has P1, sorry, that should be P2. Elevations now has P1 because we've kept it as the same issue, but issued it out to the client, and our perspective, which is very beautiful, has also been given to our client. So I was going to go through the details of doing this, the same process for documentation and tender, where we're working with changes that have more details in it, which works with the revision history, and also change markers, but we've obviously well and truly run out of time. So I will record that for you early next week and upload those processes onto the Notion page, because we don't want to miss our flights. So I guess the key thing, I guess, from a conclusion perspective is that the tool has some constraints, but it is very, very flexible. And if you sit down and have a think about it, it's a way better option to use this feature within Archicad than actually stand there and manually revision all of your drawings. And I'm even to the point of saying, even if you have 5 to 10 drawings in your set, it's a much better process, because you can then build a transmittal off the back of it instead of someone having to manually fill in a transmittal as well. Remember to do your CPD, and that's the end of that. Any questions?